Well, the president was taking no prisoners yesterday. Sat down with ABC News, did an interview on day 100, had a big rally in Michigan last night. He was grooving to the YMCA by the end of the night. So he was feeling himself yesterday. And then he went to battle with ABC News. Terry Moran was the guy who did the interview. And as Trump said, he picked Terry because he had never heard of him before, which is just a classic.
Such a nice man.
Classic line of the president of the United States. But clearly Trump likes the combative nature of the media. I mean, don't get me wrong. He loves a good fluff piece from a friendly. But he also gets his jollies sparring. Because if not, he wouldn't do this stuff. For a guy that's seen 92% negative coverage during the last 100 days in office, he is willingly allowing ABC into the Oval Office, sitting down and staring the reporters in the face and saying this to him.
Do you think the reputation of the United States has gone down under your presidency?
No, I think it's gone way up, and I think we're a respected country again. We were laughed at all over the world. We had a president that couldn't walk up a flight of stairs, couldn't walk down a flight of stairs, couldn't walk across a stage without falling. We had a president that was grossly incompetent. You knew it, I knew it, and everybody knew it, but you guys didn't want to write it because you're fake news.
All right. Thank you.
And by the way, ABC is one of the worst, I have to be honest with you.
I love that at the end. All right, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. Thank you.
Such a cute soundbite.
Thank you for that. That's very nice of you. He enjoys it. Okay, like that is Donald Trump getting his jollies. Sitting there with ABC and just staring him in the face and saying, you're one of the worst and you're the definition of fake news. But at the same time, don't you have to respect it regardless of what you think of Trump? Maybe you got full-blown TDS. You're pulling out of the driveway right now. You're hate listening, whatever. It's cool. I mean, I'm here for you. You call us up anytime at 913-408-7957. John will get you to the front of the line. You got your, in this house we believe sign. You got your, Ukraine flag and everything else flying high. Haven't seen an American flag in 30 years. But you got to admit, the guy is willing to talk to media outlets that Joe Biden would never talk to on the other side. Joe Biden would have never sat down with a Fox, with a Newsmax, with any of them. And there's only a handful. Daily Wire would have never done that in a million years. Would have never gone on radio shows, podcasts that would not have been exclusively friendly. Trump, on a big day, 100 days, says, ABC, come on in. Last week, or this might have been on Monday, he had on, what's his name, Jeffrey Goldberg from The Atlantic. He invited him in for an exclusive. The Atlantic hates him. They had the guy who was in that Signal chat with Pete Hegseth and company who blew that whole thing up. And he said, yeah, sure, you want to do a story on me? Come on in. I'll take it. Maybe it's just ego, but either way, whatever it is, it's healthy. If you were truly wanting to be a dictator, which is, of course, one of the main lines they've used over the last 100 days, why would you invite into the Oval Office adversarial media who is not going to give you a single break whatsoever? You wouldn't do it. And that's where you have to look beyond the headlines and beyond the nonsense that you're hearing from, like Emmanuel Cleaver here in Kansas City and so many others in Congress right now who are screaming dictator this, dictator that. It's like, I need the evidence beyond the fact that, they're going after a judge in Michigan who is alleged to have been giving illegal immigrants roundabout ways to avoid the law. I don't think that's like, oh my gosh, what a dictator in the way that you think it is. And then on day 100, this came out yesterday as well. This was the headline from NPR. So the outlet that, of course, is hopefully on the verge of being defunded. Come on, Congress. I don't know why this is taking so long. National Panhandler Radio put this out yesterday. More give Trump an F grade than any other grade for his first 100 days. Poll finds. Who did the poll? NPR, PBS News, and Marist. So the organization that is hopefully on the verge of being defunded is putting out a poll. Wow, color me shocked that the poll doesn't cut towards the president. I know you are just stunned by this.
Talk about a bombshell.
I know. You are and I am. So they go on to say here, 45% said Trump deserves the failing mark compared to 23% who would pass him with flying colors. They write here at NPR, it's understandable that partisans would have strongly polarized views of the president, but it's also notable that half of independents said he deserves an F, and only a slim majority of Republicans would give him an A. I know NPR would never miss on a poll. Marist would never miss on a poll. Oh, wait, let's go back to November 4th, the day before the election. Marist put out a poll, and they found Kamala Harris up by 4 points over Donald Trump.
Wrong.
Yep. Missed the mark by about 5 points there. This was the day before the election. Harris, 51%, plus 4 points against Trump, 47% among likely voters nationally. 2% support another party candidate. 2 points separate Harris and Trump in the NPR PBS Marist poll in early October. So they claimed that from early October to early November, Kamala Harris grew her lead. Think back to the fall. Who in their right mind thought over the last 4 weeks of that election, when Kamala Harris was out there going on The View, right, and being like, I don't know what I'd do differently than Joe. Everything's going great. Who in their right mind who was paying any attention to the news over the last month thought that Kamala was growing her lead leading up to November 5th? Nobody. There was not an honest person out there who thought that Kamala was improving her standing over the last 4 weeks. She was making it worse. Because what happened at that time is suddenly, I believe they realized that this thing was going to be way closer. If not, they were down. So they had to roll her out. And her rollout was a mess. Because she's a mess. And she was a mess. And she still is a mess, I'm sure. But either way, she was not good in front of the camera. She was not good off the cuff. She was not a likable personality. There was really nothing admirable at all about Kamala Harris. They made her up into this fictional character. It worked for about 4 weeks from late July all the way through the convention in mid to late August with Oprah and Michelle Obama and everybody else. And then once she actually got out there, it was like, man, this ain't going to work. This is not what we thought it was. So that same polling operation suddenly finds that Trump gets an F grade amongst the plurality of voters right now. And you're supposed to be surprised by this. By the way, every person who voted for Kamala Harris obviously is going to give him an F. So right out of the gates, you've got 40 to 45% of people who are going to give him an F because they're still, bathing in their tears from November 5th. And then you've got the other half of Americans who are like, obviously you got big-time Trump fans who are going to say A plus all the way. You've got some who are going to say a B, some who are going to say a C, and some who probably just don't like it that might give him a D. But to look at this and say, oh, yes, Trump gets an F grade, and now that means he's a complete and utter failure. I mean, what is this? First grade math class? The whole thing is kind of a sophomoric poll anyway, John.
Well, I think the Trump ratings, approval ratings, are more symbolic of the media's coverage of Trump, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Right? Most of us understand this is a process where we're waiting or we can't possibly know some of the things we've been told that we know to be true, right? And it's not even time yet for that to be factored. So, yeah, it's funny. I just go, this is what the media is telling people, so they're being successful.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. They're selling their line to the right people, I guess you would say.
But the fact of the matter is when you sort through it all and look at it, 49,000 people laid off in the government, that kind of stuff. It's actually just a few hundred here in this town. And, collectively, the numbers aren't adding up quite as big as the media would have you believe.
I think I saw this on one of our local TV stations. They still have this headline on their homepage. 49,000 laid off from Doge. It's been sitting at 49,000 for 2 weeks.
Yep.
It hasn't changed. Okay, so maybe you want to update the story and realize that this is not the bloodbath of job cuts that you told us it was going to be. And frankly, I wish that it was.
Always question nice round numbers, folks.
That is so true. Patrick Tuohy, our buddy at the Show Me Institute, is going to be here coming up at 8:30 on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM. We're streaming on the KCMO Talk Radio app tonight. Speaking of the first 100 days, you will hear a special town hall that will feature the President of the United States. Presented by News Nation. Bill O'Reilly is going to be hosting that with Chris Cuomo and Stephen A. Smith. It will air at 8 p.m. tonight right here on KCMO. You can listen to it exclusively in Kansas City on 95.7 FM. Don't miss it. And then tomorrow morning, we'll get the exclusive reaction from Bill O'Reilly at 8:30. He will join us right here on this show in this hour tomorrow. So make sure that the alarm is set. Patrick Tuohy at the bottom of the hour. In the meantime, who else got the shout out yesterday? And how does it tie in to an angle when it comes to measles here in Kansas City that is suddenly getting a lot of attention? You want to talk about media outcries? This is case in point. We'll explain it next on KCMO. So one of the more controversial members of the administration got a shout out last night at the rally that Trump did in Michigan celebrating 100 days. And I'm just waiting for the Kansas City Star to write something about Trump's rally last night and the shout out to RFK, and RFK is to blame for measles potentially coming to Kansas City. Here he was last night.
I established the new Presidential Commission to Make America Healthy Again, chaired by our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's doing a good job, Dr. Oz, right? He's doing a good job. And he's a little bit different, but I want to tell you he's a great guy. He's a great guy, and he loves his country. Just last week, Bobby announced that we're banning 8 major artificial dyes from our food supply. Sounds good to me.
Sounds good to me. So he's a different guy, but he's a great guy, that Bobby Kennedy Jr., Trump saying last night. So this ties into something that came up yesterday in the Kansas City Star and happened here in town. We had a big press conference that took place, the Kansas City Health Department, talking about measles. And the health department wants to make sure that you know, while there is not a single case of measles in Kansas City right now, they wanted to all take to the podium during a press conference to make sure that you knew they were ready for measles potentially coming to Kansas City. This feels like an episode of The Office where people are trying to justify their jobs and their paychecks. So they're like, what do we do? How do we handle this? I know. Michael Scott says we're going to hold a press conference to talk about something that hasn't impacted Kansas City. There's nothing to suggest it will have a major impact on Kansas City. But, you know, if that 1 in 100 thing happens, we're going to be ready for it here. So we are justifying our paychecks this week at the Kansas City, Missouri Health Department.
Well, we can't sue Trump without having
that's true.
A little party and a get-together.
That's a good point, yes. Since they are suing Trump and RFK, this is kind of the next chapter in that book. So the Kansas City Star writing here, measles will inevitably hit KC, leaders say. There was a big news conference yesterday to deliver urgent warnings about the dangers of the disease and how quickly it can spread. The scene, writes the Star, evoked the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic, as local leaders sought to prepare the city for an approaching public health threat. Anybody who is comparing what could be a small measles outbreak to COVID-19 is derelict in their duty of journalism. The editors of the Kansas City Star should be utterly embarrassed by the way that they have set up this story, even by their standards, of which there mostly are none. This is a pathetic way to set up a story of this nature. To hearken back to COVID-19.
Good news is I've already got the vax for the measles, so I'm set up there.
Yeah, and you know what? The good news is about 90% of people do.
Mm-hmm.
But, of course, they want it to be 95%. That's what they say is required. They go on the note here, but unlike the fearful days of March of 2020, Kansas City health leaders possess a powerful weapon against measles, a long-proven and highly effective vaccine. Okay, so this is not COVID. To compare it to COVID is completely irresponsible, and they kind of admit that in the very next sentence. They add, whether they can convince enough people to get it to prevent any serious hospitalizations or deaths remains an open question. A couple of paragraphs later. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has long sought to undercut confidence in vaccines, and he now leads the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. He has voiced his support for the measles vaccine. Write that. What more do you need to hear? This whole thing is like, we're going to write something that is totally irresponsible and then actually kind of refute what we just wrote like a sentence or two later.
360 degrees. It's going a circle.
They are so pathetic. It is unbelievable.
It's a perfect circle, though, when you nail your foot to the middle of the floor and just kind of go around. See?
That's what it is.
Shuffle.
I mean, they're trying to blame RFK, but they're admitting RFK has supported the measles vaccine, but they're still like trying to say, how can we blame him? 2 sentences later saying, Kennedy has also cut public health grants, including in Kansas City, that were helping to aid measles preparations. Man, I know you guys have never seen a government dollar that you don't want to latch onto and you don't like. But tell me, I would love to know the exact implementation of what you cannot do to prevent a measles outbreak when there's not one case of measles in Kansas City. There's one down in Branson. There's obviously more down in southwest Kansas in the Dodge and Garden City areas. But please tell me what exactly you have lost the ability to do to prevent measles that you did not have 2 weeks ago. I would actually like to hear that. And my guess is they would not be able to give you anything that is all that compelling. So instead, they hold this press conference. And, boy, never thought I'd say this, but do we miss Rex Archer yet, the former KCMO health director?
Thanksgiving.
Oh!
Boy, I love Thanksgiving.
Oh, boy, I love myself some Thanksgiving. We've only got, 162 days, give or take, to Thanksgiving. I can't wait for my dark meat. Give Daddy his dark meat. All right, Rex, that's enough. I've heard enough out of you there, big guy. But, man, it's like they never learned their lesson at the KCMO Health Department. Even though they threw out Rex, they still have the same group of clowns running the show over there, apparently. Do we need a press conference for something that's not here and that you're really just fear-mongering around that is clearly highly political? And then, of course, what they're doing is having local media carry their water. I mean, that happened all over town yesterday. All right? It happened, I mentioned Kansas City Star. You had this nonsense, of course, KCUR doing it as well. This local headline from one of the TV stations, it's not a matter of if, but when Kansas City braces for measles outbreak. I just be intellectually honest for 7 seconds, please. Is that too much to ask? Apparently it is.